Hello everybody, it's your friend Dan here and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be covering every method to solve a quadratic equation in GCSE Maths. Now there's quite a few, so let's jump straight in. Now starting off with the quadratic formula, which can be used to solve any quadratic equation no matter the coefficient of x squared. However, it can only really be used in calculator papers due to it being hard to use otherwise. Now this is the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And now what you do is you just plug the numbers in from the quadratic equation, with the coefficient of x squared being a, the coefficient of x being b, and the last bit without any x's being c. You plug that into the formula, just put it all into your calculator, and then you get two solutions, one for plus, one for minus, of x. And I'm just going to quickly hop into a whiteboard to show you how that's done. Okay, so the quadratic equation we're going to be solving is 2x squared minus 10x plus 12 equals 0. And just a quick reminder, to be able to solve a quadratic formula, it needs to be in the equal 0 state. So we're just going to start off by putting it into the format. So it's minus b, so it would be minus 10 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 10 squared is 100 minus 4ac, so 4 times 2 times 12 over 2a, and 2 times 2 is just 4. Now what you can do is you can put this into your calculator, or if for some reason you're using the quadratic formula for a non-calculator paper, don't. You can just solve it manually, because I just chose a quadratic equation that gives a nice answer. And for the plus, so if you do the plus part here, you'll get an answer of x equals 3. And if you use the minus, you'll get an answer of x equals 2. Sorry for the bad drawing, this is my first time using this new drawing tablet, but yeah, that's how you solve a quadratic equation. You just put it in the format of the quadratic formula, and then you either just put it into your calculator or solve it manually. However, if it is a non-calculator paper, there's better ways to solve it manually than the quadratic formula. Now then, talking about those better ways to do it in a non-calculator paper, the next method we're going to be covering is by inspection for quadratic equations where the coefficient of x squared is 1, and the squiggly line method for quadratic equations where the coefficient of x squared is greater than 1. Okay, so let's start off with a nice quadratic equation to do by inspection before moving on to squiggly line. Now by inspection means the coefficient of x squared is 1, so we just don't write the 1. So it's x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now, equals 0. Now what we need to do in this situation is we need to make it so that we put it in brackets, so it would be x plus a and then x plus b equals 0. And what we need here is we need a and b to add to 5 and multiply to 6. So I've chosen this rather easy. So it would just be x plus 3 and then x plus 2 equals 0. So what we just do from here is we just take it across. So it would be the opposite of the one in the bracket. So x would equal minus 3 and x would equal minus 2. And what you can do is you can just sub minus 2 or minus 3 back into the equation, this equation up here. And then if you get 0, you'll know it's correct. Now let's move on to a more tricky one that has a higher coefficient of x than 1. Now then, this is where it gets a bit tricky. And for this, we're going to welcome back our old friend, the quadratic equation we used earlier, 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. So what we do here is, instead of looking for two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to minus 10, we look for two numbers that multiply to 24. So we do the coefficient of x squared times the last number at the end, and we look for a number that multiplies to those, so 24. So you can write down the factors of 24 and then try and find it which adds to minus 10. So because it's minus 10, it would need to be two minus numbers to add to minus 10. So obviously there's 1 and 24. I already know the answer, but I'm just going to write them out for the sake of it. 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and then 4 and 6. So minus 4 and minus 6 multiplied to 24, and add to minus 10. So then what we do is we just write it out. We separate it into minus 4 and minus 6. So it's 2x squared minus 4x minus 6x plus 12. And then what you do, this is why it's called the squiggly line method, you draw a squiggly line down the middle of those two, and then you factorize each side. This is single bracket factorisation. If you're wanting to solve a quadratic equation, you should already know how to do single bracket factorisation, so I'm just going to speed through it for you. So firstly, you take 2x out, so 2x, and then what's left is x minus 2, and then we want the other bracket on this side to be the same, so we're going to take out minus 6, and then it would be x minus 2. And then what you do is you just split it into two brackets with this part and the actual brackets. So it would be the two brackets, I'm just going to go over here for them. It would be 2x minus 6 equals 0. And then the other bracket would also equal 0 to be able to work out x minus 2 equals 0. And you just do some quick rearranging. For 2x minus 6, you get x equals 3. And for x minus 2, you get x equals 2, which is the same answer that we got for the quadratic formula, further proving that any method is valid. Any of the methods in this video are valid. However, this method is significantly easier for non-calculator. Don't use this method for calculator, it will cause you so many issues. However, I would recommend using it for non-calculator over the quadratic formula. And I know this may seem tricky, but if you just do it, if you do a worksheet of these questions and you get used to the pattern and the process, it becomes easy. It's not difficult, it's just hard to remember what you have to do. So just practice and work on it. Now, next up is completing the square. This technically is a method to solve a quadratic equation, but more often you only have to use it when they actually ask you to solve it via completing the square. I honestly didn't like completing the square when I did my GCSEs. I may have learnt calculus just so I could work out the turning points easier. But anyway, let's jump straight in into a completing the square example. Okay, I don't like completing the square this much, so let's get this over quickly. We're doing it with the quadratic equation, 2x squared plus 8x minus 5 equals 0. And first things first, we need to factorise the 2 out. If the coefficient of x squared is 1, we don't need to factorise out what's in front of the x squared. But if it is greater than 1 or not 1, we do need to factorise it out. So we only factorise it out of the first two terms. So it's 2, then in brackets x squared plus 4x, close brackets, minus 5. And then of course don't forget the equals 0. You can lose marks if you forget the equals 0. And then we need to actually complete the square. So how it works is completing the square. It is x minus half of what it is, so it would be 4 over 2 squared minus brackets 4 over 2 squared. And then close brackets, minus 5 equals 0. So then what this is it's 2x, that's meant to be a plus, x plus 4 minus 2 squared, which is also 4, minus 4, minus 5 equals 0. And then you simply expand it to x plus 4, it's meant to be squared there, x plus 4 squared. So what it is it's 2 minus 4 times minus 4, which is minus 8, but then you also need to minus this 5, so it's minus 13 equals 0, and then I'm just going to take up here for the rest of it, and then we just start rearranging it. So we take the minus 13 across and divide it by 2. So it would be x plus 4 squared equals 13 over 2. Then you square root both sides, so it's x plus 4 equals plus or minus, because that's where you get your two answers from, 13 over 2. And then it's x equals minus 4 plus or minus root 13 over 2. And that's how you complete the square. It's a bit complicated, and quite honestly it's the hardest to remember, and it's the least viable. I don't know why we have to learn how to complete the square for GCSE Maths, because it's not particularly applicable to anything else in GCSE Maths, and when you go on to A-level Maths, you learn differentiation, which allows you to work out turning points, which is what you usually use completing the square for. But yeah, this is the last method to complete the quadratic equation. Anyway, if you enjoyed that video and found it helpful for solving quadratic equations, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. A lot of effort goes into these videos, so it would be really appreciated.